Welcome to Office Hours. I'm Steve Drost. With me, as always, Will Kaplan. Of course, me and Will, both from the Quivr CRM team. What is Quivr? We are the CRM built by financial advisors for financial advisors, where our objective is simple. How can we help you run your business at peak efficiency? Now, each episode, we tackle a couple of cool items that came directly from users who are trying to do just that, make their lives a little bit easier. Will, we all know I have little kids, right? They're 3.5 and 5.5. Yours are a little older. And honestly, your daughter was kind of giving me some lip the other day. I don't know if I like that a lot. But a common question we get is, what do we do with children in the system?
Yeah, it's a tough one because it's not always the same answer, and it changes over time, which I think makes it difficult too. I mean, one of the limitations that we're stuck with is contacts in the system. And this is a Salesforce limitation. You can't attach like to everything everywhere. You kind of get one household. And so then the question becomes, we've talked about this several times, is like, okay, if I have young kids, where do I put them? And then what happens if they like turn 18 or turn 21 or turn 25? What do I do with them? Do I leave them? Do I move them? And then you get the other end of the case, which is like, I've got, families with adult children where the family is my client and the kids are my client. It's a multi-generational situation. Now I've got like another weird thing to kind of figure out. And so we've talked about this. I'm going to, get your take on it here in terms of how you like to deal with it. I know how I used to deal with it, but I think we're pretty aligned in terms of how we structure this stuff.
Yeah, the first question I would ask yourself is, like, let's look at, me and my wife. We have two little boys, right? And my 5-year-old. The only reason my 5-year-old is in Drost Financial's Quivr is because he is a member of my wife and I's household, right? Is that fair? The only reason he's in there. If he was not, if my wife and I had nothing to do with the firm, nothing to do with the clients, he wouldn't be in that system. So the first question I would ask yourself is, regardless of age, regardless of relationship with this person, is the only reason they're in the system because they are a member of a household? So my 5-year-old, the answer to that is yes. Now, if my 5-year-old was 35, but he still has no relationship with the firm outside of being the son of a client or the son, right? Then the answer is still yes. The only reason they're in the system is because they are a key person within a single household in the system. And if the answer to that is yes, without a doubt, make them a contact, put them inside of the household, mom and dad's household, a household that's a client, and then use that relation to household field to mark that they're a child. Now, if you wanted to mark the difference between a minor child and an adult child, that's totally fine. I can see why you'd want to do that. Just add a new pick list option. I'll call it adult child, or add two and call it minor and adult, and go ahead and do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's all I would do. And I think for the most part, our users understand that. Where it starts to get a little more gray is what happens when the answer to that first question is the only reason they're in my system because they're a part of a household. When that answer goes from yes to no. And common times for that is they had a UTMA or UGMA and they hit the age of majority, or they're 18 and mom and dad want to open a Roth IRA for them. Something like that happens, or they're 22 and they get their first job and they want you to review their benefits, or they're 30 and they actually become a client now, right? So it's when that relationship starts to evolve. What we then recommend you do is, right now, they're no longer in the system only because they're a child, whether adult or minor. What we now recommend you do is you pull them out of mom and dad's household and make them their own household. So in that case, let's fast forward 13 years and my 5-year-old is now 18. I have every intention of opening up a Roth IRA for my kids when they turn 18, and we're going to fund it. But in the eyes of my regulator, that 18-year-old is now no longer son of Steve and Marissa, my wife, right? That 18-year-old is now legal client, and I have the same compliance requirements for that 18-year-old as I do any other client. So we pull them out, create their own household. Then we use a feature inside of Quivr called related parties that links these households together. So what we're able to do is create a related party. My 5-year-old son's name is Calvin, and we could say Calvin is now in his own household. So the Drost, Calvin household. And he is the son of Steve and Marissa. So he's in his own household. But now we have a spot to store all those compliance records, to review his IPS, to review his client agreement. We're now treating him as if he is his own entity, which he is. He's now 18. He now has his own relationship with us. But at the same time, I now know that Steve and Marissa are related to Calvin, right? That was kind of a long monologue there, but setting the stage on what we're trying to accomplish, it does start with a philosophical conversation and then ultimately gets into the nitty-gritty of how do we actually handle this.
Yeah, and I think it's important for our users to also note that, like, just because you've assigned a contact to one household doesn't mean that you can't move them later. And so it's pretty easy to break those households apart. You just create the new household for Calvin and you move him over into it as the client. And then you come back with the related party. And you can actually see this in the sample data we provide. So, we talk about sort of keeping the Halperts in the system. You'll notice that, Jim and Pam's daughter, Cece, is in the system as a separate household because we're treating her as an adult child who might have their own accounts, might have their own agreement, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And so you can actually see it in the sample data too.
And even if we bounce past just, immediate family, the same philosophy. Are they in the system only because they're related to a singular household versus are they in the system for another reason? It's applicable to other relationships too. For example, I like to have powers of attorney inside of the system, especially for clients who are single. So I know who that person is. Well, if, let's use the Halperts as the example. If Jim and Pam have, I don't know, Dwight as their power of attorney, I want Dwight to be in the system. And because let's assume his only relationship to the household or to my firm in general is the Halperts, I'm going to put him inside of the Halperts and I'm going to have his relationship to the household be power of attorney. But let's say 3 years into this relationship, Dwight reaches out and says, "Hey, Steve, I want to meet. I want to talk about my finances." Okay, well, then what's going to happen is I'm going to pull Dwight out of the Halperts, create a Dwight Schrute household, move Dwight into there, and then I'm going to use related parties to say, well, Dwight is the power of attorney for Jim and Pam. And that way, when I'm on the Halperts, I can see the related parties right there. And I can see, oh, yeah, duh, Dwight is their power of attorney. I have their information here. And right, even if Dwight doesn't work with us, I'm not going to change anything. So it can be applied to a lot of these maybe softer. I mean, they're important relationships, but it's like kind of like that softer relationship data that you're going to want to be aware of, but you also just need to know where to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because it kind of also works the other way too, where, I had clients who one of their parents had passed away. The parent was, one of the original clients. Kids come in, they become adult clients. Parent passes away. Do I leave it in there? Do I bring him under? He was kind of they'd lost their mom a couple years before. So does dad now live under the kid's household? Because it's really just in there to kind of capture that, date of death, date of birth for some inherited accounts. Like it brings up sort of, there's some weird cases that you get to just for, how people end up kind of living their lives and the needs that we have in order to track their data.
For sure. And I hope, most of the, we both practice, or practiced and practice, but obviously kids, beneficiaries, powers of attorney, those are the most common ones we see. Of course, there can be some more complex, nuanced, maybe one-off relationships with business owners and deaths and second families, things like that. Divorces can get a little complex in systems. But if you follow that same thought process, why are they in the system? Is it just because they're a member of this household or for a greater reason? And then you apply the multiple or singular household with that answer, you're going to get most of them. And if maybe for these more nuanced ones, you have questions, just come to office hours, right? Come ask us. We'll walk you through what we would do and why, because there are many ways to tackle these relationships, but they're still really, really important. So yeah, that's a wrap, Will. Good stuff as always. If you are a user, like I just mentioned, get to office hours. We can talk about these items. We enjoy these conversations. If you're not a Quivr user, that's okay. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect, but remember, it's not too late. Come schedule a demo. Come hang out with me. Come hang out with Will and see what Quivr can do for you.